4 years ago, I made this green wool 1890s walking skirt. It was one of the first full projects I'd made where I looked at it afterwards and thought this came out exactly how I envisioned it. And today, I'm gonna rip it apart. Welcome to SnappyDragon Studios. I'm V, a fashion historian and I guess person who takes apart her new old clothes. This 1890s Victorian walking skirt was part of a 3-piece outfit I made for myself in 2020, so 4 years ago. And at the time, I was still fairly new to costuming, and I'd never done a full outfit like that and had it come out like exactly as I envisioned it. But I didn't know what I know now at that time. There were a lot of skills I hadn't picked up, a lot of things I wasn't confident about doing, a lot of things I didn't know about fitting clothes to myself. And so now, 4 years later with that knowledge, I look at the skirt and I'm like, I could do so much better. The thing is, I have 2 yards of material left over. I am actually gonna take this entire skirt apart and remake it better. It can be like this really emotional experience, going back to your old projects and looking at what you feel like you did well, what you still love about them, and then like what you want to do better. And that's kind of what I love about the fact that you can just take something apart and rebuild it in this situation. So like if I had changed size significantly, I could make whatever fit adjustments I needed. This is a 5-panel, 5-gored walking skirt. The reason I used the pattern I used is because this is a wool flannel. It's warm and it's on the heavier side. I knew that I had some fit issues that interacted with my fibromyalgia and I could get really bad lower back pain when I was in Victorian costume. I didn't know how much of it was coming from the weight of the skirts. So I used a pattern with a very small hem sweep. There's not a lot of fabric in it, and that's why I ended up with 2 yards left over. However, 4 years of wearing historical clothes and history bounding and costuming later, I know that that's not actually where that back pain comes from. That back pain comes from having a corset that doesn't fit me well or a waistband that's too tight. I am going to take this apart. It's 5 panels, but there were also 7 and even 9 panel skirts, I think, worn during that time period. Trim down these existing panels so I can fit 2 more panels in as full and swoopy as I can make them out of that 2 yards I've got left. To do that, I do need to basically take the whole thing apart because I'm going to be changing the shape of each panel to fit the 2 additional panels onto the waistband. There's also a bunch of other things that I just want to try to do better about how this skirt is. I initially made the waistband by just felting a strip of fabric and it's sort of held up, and the pocket is like completely in the wrong place. It's not finished very well, and it's low enough down on the skirt that it's actually hard for me to reach into it. Also, I've learned a few tricks for doing stuff with the hem of the skirt. So I'm gonna rip this thing apart. Out comes the seam ripper, and I'm gonna rebuild it from the ground up. And honestly, I'm really excited to be able to do that. It's nice to be able to, instead of looking at an old project that I'm no longer quite happy with because my skills have improved or something didn't work out quite right, and instead of thinking, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to give up on it, I'm never gonna be able to wear it again, I can look at it and think, I love this thing. I can improve it. Now that I know more, I can take it apart and rebuild it better, and I can continue loving it. It can get surprisingly emotional going back to an old project. Okay, maybe not that surprising. It opens up everything you felt about it when you were making it, and you end up reflecting a lot on how you've changed, how life has changed, how that changes what you make. I had a really similar experience with this video's sponsor, Hooks and Needles, a subscription box that's the go-to choice for crafters who love knitting or crocheting. You've never seen me knit or crochet before, and to explain why, I gotta get into this stuff I normally save for my therapist. I mentioned in the clothes on their backs that I'm estranged from my parents. It's a rough choice to make, but I promise you anyone who's made it wouldn't have if it wasn't what they needed. Growing up, my mom was knitting all the time. Car rides, waiting rooms, at home in the evening, anytime her hands were free. Much as I would like to be able to say, this made me love crafting, or I learned so much from her, it actually made me really afraid of yarn craft. I tried to knit as a kid, but there was a lot of criticism when I struggled or liked projects and materials my mom didn't. I gave up and switched to crochet, which was a ton of fun and I got much further, but the criticism was even worse. I remember being told at one point that crocheting was inferior because it's just tying knots in string. I stopped trying sometime in my early teens and haven't touched yarn craft since, except for tablet weaving on this channel. Trying out the hooks and needles kits, now that I'm older and no one's looking over my shoulder, feels much more doable. They're perfect for beginners, which is what I am at this point, or for anyone looking to improve the skills they already have. You can choose between knitting or crochet boxes, including amigurumi, and the boxes ship in a set sequence, so no matter when someone starts, they always receive the first box in the series. Everyone is on the same journey, learning from the same foundation, and no one's missing out. They've also started doing tutorial videos for anyone who does better with video instructions. Hi, that's me! Starting with box 1 for both crochet and knitting. Each box is full of high quality yarns, plus all the necessary tools and a free gift so you can get started right away. The patterns cover different skill levels, so every order is an opportunity to learn new stitches and techniques with clear, easy to follow guides, plus those tutorial videos that are coming out. I haven't made anything I'm ready to show you. It's probably gonna be a while before I'm ready for that. If you're also not going through a box a month, the subscription is flexible and you can pause or cancel anytime with no hassle. And if you need support, there's an active community over 14,000 strong you can turn to online. I'm really enjoying reconnecting with my crafting past life. Whether you're new to yarn craft, coming in with years of experience, or hauling baggage like I was, you can check out Hooks and Needles at the link in the description. Don't forget to use my code SnappyDragon20 for 20% off your first box. If this was gentle enough for my yarn craft trauma, then you're gonna be just fine. To make this skirt wider, I'm going to insert 2 more gores or panels. This was originally a 5-gore skirt. It's easy enough to just add a couple more. However, because the 5 panels are cut to basically fill the entire waist circumference, I need to trim them down. Instead of just trying to like math that somehow because they're all different proportions, I am taking a pattern I already have for a 7-gore trumpet skirt, and I'm just gonna use the waist measurements from that. I might fudge things a little bit with the back pieces becoming the side back pieces, only because this wool is really thick. I'm planning on gathering the back, and I want to make sure I have enough space there for like all the gathers I want to put in and the skirt placket. Now I have 2 yards of fabric left to cut 2 new ones out of. And I'm going to use a trick for that I used on a skirt that I made off camera. I took the pattern pieces I have for the center back, and I sort of just like swung them out, like rotated them to make a bigger fraction of the circle around the hem, as much as I had space for in the fabric. And now I'll use this one as the pattern piece for the other side. I took another 1/2 inch out the side pieces to make sure I had room for all the gathers at the back. Skirt construction seams are usually pretty simple. Match, sew, next piece, rinse and repeat. Gonna see if I can reuse the plackets, spare myself sewing the hooks and eyes back on, which I hate doing. I've got all the pieces of the skirt sewn together and I've got the gathering stitches put in place. Now I basically have to put it back together. Waistband and placket, I'm gonna make some minor changes to those, and then the new hem, which I think is gonna be the thing that's most different aside from, you know, all the extra panels I put in the skirt. So the waistband I originally made, and I don't know why I decided to do this, I used a strip of fabric from the selvage, but I used the selvage as the inside, the seam allowance that's all tucked in and isn't visible. And I don't know why I decided to do that. I felted it, so it's held together. But I think when I put it back together, I'm gonna use the selvage as the top edge, and then I won't have to deal with even the possibility of it fraying. So I've folded it and put a pin in the center, so I know where that is, and matched that to the center of the center front panel of the skirt. Right side to right side. One of the sides of the selvage is smoother, so I'm gonna use that for the outside. Pin those together. And then I can just go all the way around the rest of the skirt and pin things together there too. When I get to the sides, I'll pull the gathering stitches in so that they match the rest of the waistband, and, you know, make sure to leave an appropriate amount of flat on either on or next to the center back for the placket. Take 3 at getting this right. I've left an extra inch on one side of the waistband for the placket, then divided the rest equally in half. Okay, so apparently the way that I did the placket on this skirt is just really weird, and that does mean I divide the waistband evenly in half. So not just take 3, take 4. The placket back on. This is the edge of the skirt, the waistband. This is the eye or side of the placket. Fold that crease under. Flip this. And I'll have to stitch it down by hand, but it's on. Plackets are on. They're a little tricky to see, but they've still got most of the hooks and eyes attached. Now, that means I can sew the skirt back seam from where the plackets end all the way down to the hem. Even up the hem. The only thing left to do on this skirt is the hem. I want it to be as full and swirly as possible. So again, like that black walking skirt, I'm putting nylon horsehair braid in the hem. This stuff is about 5 inches wide. This is the soft version. You can get a stiffer one, but I didn't want anything that was going to leave too much of a line. My method for putting it in, I learned from a Lena Piprick video some number of years ago. I think it's in her book. First, I'm going to bind the ends with twill tape because it gets prickly and I don't really like being stabbed through my stockings while I'm wearing a skirt. Then I'm going to machine sew it all the way around the bottom edge. This is antique wool hem braid. I'm going to bind the bottom edge of the skirt with this by folding it in half. It's annoyingly a bit narrower than I'd like, but it'll work. The top has this, it's got this cord in it that you can pull and it'll sort of curve it and bring it in a little bit. So I can curve it to fit the shape of the skirt. So I'll go through it, do that, and then probably hand baste the top, fold it like a blind hem, and use the machine's blind hem stitch to secure it in place at the top edge. Crank the ISO so you can actually see as this skirt fabric just eats light. I'm going to fold it like so and run it through the machine so that the stitches are mostly going into the horsehair braid. Every 4 stitches or so, I think, it does a super small zigzag over and just barely catches the wool fabric of the skirt, which is what makes it hold in place but still stay pretty invisible. I don't love visible top stitching, so the plackets get sewn back on by hand. Plus the one fastener I lost when taking them apart. I'm gonna try to put the pocket back in by machine just to save time. Right side, because I'm right-handed. If you were left-handed, you might find it more convenient to put your pocket on the other side. Found that the correct place for me to put it is 4 inches down from the waistband, because then I can put my hand in and my fingertips will touch the bottom of the pocket. Previously I put it way further down than that, and then I would have to lean down. I have to open up the right seam between the back and the side back panels and then stitch the pocket in. I also got the geometry a little bit mixed up the last time I did this, so we're gonna try to do it better this time. Stitch the side seams of the pocket in, so all of the seam allowances are basically between the pocket and the skirt. There's a twill tape at the top, so the weight of whatever's in your pocket doesn't drag down on the seam too much, and that I'm going to stitch to the waistband seam allowance to help hold everything in place. It's so interesting to see how this outfit looks 4 years later with completely different underpinnings. But it still works. The matching vest is next up to get remade. The skirt is now fantastically twirly, and it isn't uncomfortable at all. I'm gonna get so much use out of it now that the weather is colder, and I think the extra volume has actually made it warmer too. There's something really freeing about knowing that when a piece of clothing isn't right for you anymore, you can remake it to fit better, look better, or even become something completely new. My sewing journey started with modifying clothes I already had, and even though I can make things from scratch now, it's still such an important skill. Tell me in the comments about a garment you made over. A thrift flip, something you altered, something you rebuilt when your style changed. While you're there, click the button to tell YouTube you like twirly skirts, and subscribe for more historical sewing sass. You can keep up with me around the internet at Miss SnappyDragon, and visit patreon.com/SnappyDragonStudios for pattern and materials info. See you next time!